I'm Jim Ross. He's Matt Van Horn. And this is the 3 Mile Domination Podcast.
How's everything going, Matt?
Hey, Jim, how you doing?
Good. Now you're prepping for a busy week of travel coming up?
Yeah, those come up every once in a while. We just finished up a busy week of in-office work just last week, so everyone I'm sure listening knows how that goes.
Yeah, you just kind of bash them together, though. I'm much louder. If you're going to travel, let's get it all done at one shot, so that sounds like what you're doing next week.
Yeah, absolutely. Get it all knocked out. But no, this past week has been real interesting. I finished up one of our first webinars we've done with the Florida Self-Storage Association on revenue management, and that went very, very well.
Yeah, I watched you doing that. I attended that webinar, and it was really good. So I figured, why not? Let's go over that for the people that weren't aware of it or weren't on that webinar. Not in so much detail as you did before, but let's go over that revenue management webinar here, and then I'll remind everybody at the end of this podcast. But we'll also provide the download for the slides from that webinar on our show notes on this podcast. So anyway, I guess go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, I just, we decided on revenue management because that's one of those webinars that everyone just loves to hear about. What I found out was that I think it's mostly owners that love to hear about that, and managers really don't care. And when I say that, it's not that they don't care. It's just that as a self-storage manager, on a daily basis, you've got so many things going on, so many customers to deal with, so much selling, marketing, and all these other things that we just really didn't have to deal with 10 years ago when we all first started this business. That when it comes to managing the actual revenue and trying to figure out ways, I think most managers just don't have time to really focus on it. So when I did this this webinar on revenue management, we tried to, incorporate that in. So there would be some strategies that you could take right then and easily manipulate them into your store so that you could start making more money right away. So,
Great.
Yeah, one of the things we discussed was revenue management, I think, often gets confused with rate management. Whenever we say revenue management, think, okay, I want you to tell me how often I need to raise my rates and for what percentage and how to do it, and that's all I want to know. And it's really a lot more than that. Rate management is what I consider to be just an overall strategy to most effectively manage revenue to maximize return. That's what you want to do is get the highest price per unit that you possibly can to maximize your revenue. That includes rate management. That includes knowing what your competitors are doing and what you have, or what I would consider your USP or unique selling proposition. Your marketing plans, figuring out what your customers are worth and for how long they stay at your property, and how much money you're going to generate on a marketing campaign. Because like I said, as far as I'm concerned, that is part of revenue management, because you need to consider how much money you're bringing in versus what you're spending, if it's even worth your time. We say all the time, we hear, well, are our yellow pages worth anything? Well, in some markets, no, they're not, but in some markets, they are. If you're tracking it and you know what you're bringing in, it doesn't matter if you're sending up smoke signals and that's bringing you customers. It really shouldn't matter what the process is, as long as you're making money off of it.
Sure.
So, the things we discussed on the webinar, I'm going to hit the top 5 things that we discussed today, and obviously we're not going to be able to get into them in extreme detail today. And also, being this is as an important topic as it is, I'm sure we'll touch on these in different, podcasts in the future, just because it's so important. But, the things that we discussed on Monday or Tuesday was just, understanding your market and your universal selling proposition, which I'll go into in a moment. Overview of pricing and rate management, which we'll hit on. Understanding rate management and why it's necessary, and this is where it comes into training. We're getting your managers on board to be able to do this. Different pricing strategies and what I would consider incentives or bonuses. There are ways to bonus using revenue management that I think make more sense, because if you're bonusing your managers on something, let's say just however many units they rent, I don't think that's always the best way. And I don't think it's always the best way to hold your managers to some financial metric that they may or may not be able to hit. I was down here during the real estate crash, And, you know, when you get a manager that gets their budget based off when times were doing phenomenal, and they look at it, and they know they're not going to make any of those numbers the entire year, then it just shoots your morale right out of the sky. So those kind of things don't help at all. And we discussed ways you can get around that. But when we discuss, saying for, USP or universal selling proposition, basically what is the difference between you and your competitors? What makes you unique? Then you have to figure out, okay, well, who are my competitors? And in 3 Mile Domination, I mean, that's part of our tagline where we consider now your competitors in self-storage. If you're in any regular market, even mid-market to, higher end MSA, it's probably 3 miles. Now, if you're in Manhattan, it's probably blocks. If you're in an extremely rural area, it could be more than 3 miles. If you have an RV facility, it could be even more than that, where people are willing to drive to you to store their vehicles. But in the general residential area, let's say 3 miles. That's why we focus ours on 3 Mile Domination. And that is part of it, trying to figure out what you have that everyone doesn't. And in the webinar and, the slides, again, we can't go into it too in depth, but I actually laid out about 30 questions in there that you can use, put down on a sheet that can say, okay, do I have this versus what my competitors have? And it's really for your knowledge so you can present in your selling presentation what your property has that maybe even the other properties don't. I'm not saying that to trash your competitors in a sales presentation. I don't think that ever helps anyone. But I do believe that you should be
educating the customer. They don't know what the questions ask. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And your customer, if let's say they get to you and they visited the other properties, if you're bringing up things that you have that the other properties don't, they're going to remember that. Or when they go to the next property after you, because a lot of times they will, people shop. You would hope that they don't leave. You should be able to close that deal right there if they're on your property. But if they do go to another property, they should be able to remember that, oh, yeah, I forgot. He has cameras on his property, and this property doesn't. That makes me feel safer. And that's really what you want. And it's not all about price. I mean, there's a Stanford study that I hit all the time and I love to present. And it basically says, 17% of your customers, and I don't care what industry you're in, this is general, will choose the highest price for any service because they believe that with price comes value. And then 13% of your customers will choose the lowest price for any service because, again, they're not going to pay for it. They don't care what it is. They don't believe there's any value in price. And then 70% of your customers will choose on something other than price. And that's where value comes in. So, again, we can't delve too much into this today, but again, know what your value is to your market. Get on Google Maps, search 3 miles out from your property, type in self-storage, put in your address, and you can see all the competitors around you, and then go do a field trip and visit with them. So, I mean, that's basically what we hit on the first part of USP there, knowing that. Again, if you go to our website, you can download the slides, and it'll get into much more detail on exactly things that you should do. But with this, we just want to kind of touch over on some of the stuff.
Yeah. And kind of going back on about the competition, though, that's one of the first things I do when I hire any managers. I tell them exactly that. Take a day and then go in and go visit all your competition. Act like you're a customer and to see exactly how they present their items, what their salesmanship is like, know what you're up against. So it kind of dovetails nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you and I take over properties, and one of the first things I do when I take over a property or fit it in right within that, first month or two is I go out there with my camera and my spreadsheet and my pen and I visit every property. I find out what they have, what they don't, what their prices are, what their specials are. Do they require deposits? Is it first of the month or anniversary day? All these things that I can use as information to be able to formulate an equation of my property to bring things up that we have that no one else does, or that we do better.
Perfect. Rich, what's the other point you have?
Oh, the next one we did was, next thing we went over was rate management and pricing. This was everyone's favorite. Obviously, everyone wants to know how much to raise your rent and how often you should do it and get away with it. And I think you and I have dealt with this with different owners and managers. I'm just going to say it on this podcast, like I said it on the webinar. If you're 100% occupied, you are losing money. You just are. And the fear is people don't want to raise rates because they're afraid that their customers are going to revolt and be in the front of their, property with pitchforks and torches. And it's not quite that way. And I go into reasons, I'll go into some reasons real quick why. But if you say you're 100% occupied and you do not want to raise rates, you don't want to do anything else, you want to keep it exactly 100% physically occupied, you've done 4 things to yourself. You've set a permanent limit on your potential revenue. That's it. You've set the ceiling. You're not going any higher. If you're not raising rents, you're not going to do anything to shake the apple cart. You're done there. That's it. That's as much money as you're going to make. Your expenses will increase because they do, and I don't care if it's property taxes, if it's employment costs, if it's utilities, any of those things, they increase every year. They just typically do. And again, your expenses will increase, and you will sit back and watch those expenses deteriorate your NOI like a school of piranha. And they will. It'll completely nip everything that you do in the future, and every year your NOI will go down. Number 3, you'll continually turn away potential customers, new people that can be exposed to your business on a regular basis. And this is one of the things that really drives me crazy, because you need new people. I'd rather be 95% physically occupied, and managing my rates correctly and my revenue correctly to where I'm, doing the best I can on that side and bringing in new customers regularly that can be exposed to my business than keeping the same people at 100% physically occupied all the time. And then the 4th point that I brought up was you enjoy burning $100 bills because if you're spending any money marketing, that's what you're doing. So those are the 4 statements that we hit with rate management. And again, one of the biggest things that people want to know is, well, how do you raise rates? How much and how often? And 2 of the things that I did hit was on how the REITs do it, how Extra Space and KeepSmart, because I know for a fact how they do it. And Extra Space, they increase their rates on current customers up to 7% and as often as every 9 months. And I know this because I actually sat in an hour-long revenue management presentation with their head of revenue management. I mean, this is so important that our big competitors, our REITs, I don't care if it's Sovereign, which is Uncle Bob's, KeepSmart, Public Storage, Extra Space, they all have dedicated departments specifically for rate management and for revenue management. So that's how important this is. KeepSmart increases their rate 6% on current tenants, once at 6 months and then again at every 12 months. And then how we do it, we tend to focus more or lean more towards the revenue, the Extra Space revenue management formula of increasing rates on current customers 7% as often as every 9 months. And again, you can do other things based on your individual market, but those are kind of the, how we lean towards this. And I know, Jim, you kind of follow that same pattern at your stores.
Oh, yeah, no, exactly. And anyone that's listened to our podcast, from last week, we went into more detail on exactly that, on the rate increases and the rate structure. But, yeah, I figure these REITs like that, like Extra Space, they've, have all that huge sample, and they spend all that time and money and figuring out the percentages on what that sweet spot is, on how often and what percentage to raise them. Can't argue with that. So, yeah, we do exactly that. We've done it for years. And it's been, you need to see it. It's always an upward trend of income. Even if, I have some sites that, their occupancy is a little bit lower than it has been in years past. However, our money's up. So it works. So don't even second guess it and just do it.
No, absolutely. And then the next topic we covered, was getting everyone on board. And this is training your owners and your managers. Because again, we have just as many owners of self-storage facilities and investors that are financially part of these stores that don't want to raise rates because they're scared, just as much as I have to deal with managers. So part of what we talked about was also training. I think the first thing we have to get comfortable with, and it's not necessarily the most popular item right now, is that you're in business to make money. And I want to stress that point. And that's not the most popular sentiment right now, especially the way the economy is and, how unemployment is and a number of other things. But again, you didn't start a business just to watch it go along. You're in business to make money so you can do more things, so you can build other facilities, put money into other endeavors. You have to do this to be able to increase your revenue because your expenses are going up all the time, and it's not stuff that we can control. Like I said, utilities, insurance. A number of different items. So first thing we wanted to hit on training was financial training. I'm surprised and shocked almost at the same time as often as we hire managers. that we don't give them any financial training whatsoever. They don't have any idea what a profit and loss or income statement looks like. They don't have any idea how to interpret it. They don't have any idea how we come up with budgets on our properties. And I think that's something that hurts us in this industry, for the fact that you're giving control of a, $4 million to $10 million asset to someone that has no idea how the finance of it works. So I think that, and not all managers are in this boat. Some people come in and they have a lot of experience, but a lot of people don't. So I think, and sometimes this is their first foray into something financial, and they really, really need to understand it. The next thing we talked about was how to make your increases easier. As a manager or an owner, learn that, number one, this is part of our business. This is how our business model functions, so we have to do it. Number two, understand that your increases on your customers are not personal. It's really not. It's a thing that we have to do on everyone to be able to make sure our facilities survive. And number three, you can make a reason for every one of your customers not to have an increase. I mean, we could go through all of our customers at every property and say, okay, well, we know this person has 5 kids. We know this person was in the hospital. We know this, this, and this. And I'm not saying you can't make individual determinations like that. But when you're doing it on every customer, it slows the process down, and it just runs it down and makes makes the managers go and the owners go crazy. So I know, Jim, you just did some rent increases not too long in a facility. I mean, that didn't turn out too bad, did it?
Oh, no. That scared the owner half to death because, it was a new site. So, again, they weren't on a system of doing it on a regular basis. And so we came in, just raised everyone across the board. He about had a heart attack, but it's been 3 months into it, and I think we had 1 move out and 3 phone calls. So,
yeah,
which is nothing. He loves it. Yep, exactly. It's nothing.
I mean, how many of them was it? Would you say 350?
Approximately, yep.
Okay, so let's say 350, and you had 3 people call you, which is statistically almost zero.
Yeah.
And then even out of those 3 people, let's assume that 2 of them just wanted to speak their mind and then finally acquiesced and was okay with it. And let's say 1 of them went off the deep end, maybe you had to rescind it, just for numbers' sake. I mean, if you're thinking about how much revenue you just increased, let's say it was an average of just a couple dollars rent increase. You just brought yourself, maybe $1,000, maybe $1,500 more a month.
Mm-hmm.
It's just unbelievable how fast it adds up. So, some of the things we talked about, how to, again, make your increases automatic. Don't talk about it. Don't look at it. Let the computer do it. Most of your newer management softwares, and I don't care if you have SiteLink, if you have Web Self-Storage, if you have CenterShift, if you have Domico, if you have Sentinel, with CirrusSoft, or any of the other ones that I've left out. They all have this function built in where you can increase on a certain amount of days, which you would just obviously translate into months, and then at a certain percentage. So just go ahead and do that. Again, no conducting rent increases on a tenant-by-tenant basis. That will just drive you insane. And again, making them automatic removes any hesitation. And 2 of the fears that I talked about, and this is one of the things I do want to mention on this call. Everything else you can read on the slides that we're going to put up, and we'll try to get a copy of the webinar as well. But one of the things we want to talk about is addressing fears. There's 2 fears I think that every manager and an owner, if they work on the property on a regular basis, have. One of the biggest fears among self-storage managers is they will be blamed for the increase. Is that you're going to send out these 350 letters like Jim and I was just talking about rent increases, and the manager's scared to death that the tenants are going to call or the customers are going to call and just smack them around. And that's really tends not to be the case. So I think when we're doing this, especially with new properties and new managers who've never done it before, that we need to make sure that they understand that we understand that fear, but it's not probably going to happen to them. Yes, you're going to get one person that's going to call and probably go off the deep end and scream and holler, but that's just the hazards of business. And you could do that by doing anything, changing anything. If you were to change your office hours, you would get somebody that would do that. At least this one's going to make us some money. And then the other one that I like to talk about, and I think it's another fear, is that all of our customers are going to know what everyone's paying and that they're all going to come up and be upset. And the fact is, and it's what I call the everyone will talk syndrome, our customers are not holding a meeting of the XYZ Self-Storage Customer Club. There's no secret meetings. They're not all getting together and wondering, comparing notes what everyone else is paying. I mentioned this when Jim and I did a presentation for ISS in Vegas a couple months ago. you pay different prices for the same thing all the time. You're just not even mentally aware of it. You know, we're aware of it in self-storage because we're in it every day, but if you were to go outside of self-storage, do you think about when you make a hotel reservation what the other people in the hotel are paying? Most people
I
don't.
do now.
Well, yeah, we do now, but the same, you know, when I traveled from Orlando, I flew out of Orlando to Las Vegas for the presentation for ISF a couple months ago. I was on a plane of probably 300 people. Have no idea what they paid for their ticket versus what I paid. No clue. And to be honest with you, it didn't even cross my mind. Sporting events, the same thing. Whether, you know, obviously if you're sitting in an upper bowl seat versus a lower bowl seat, you probably know that the person down there paid more money than you. But you have no idea what the person 3 seats down from you paid. No clue. And the same thing with concerts. So this happens all the time where we're purchasing things, where people are purchasing the same thing and they're paying different prices. How about automobiles? You know, you go buy a car, you know, you might be a better negotiator than the person who bought one before you, and you got a better price. It happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then a couple of the other things we talked about were different pricing strategies. I'm a big fan of having different pricing strategies for online versus offline buyers. Everything that I've learned about online buyers in the self-storage business is they tend to be price shoppers. So I will tend to have my lowest rates showing online. It's something that I've been testing out that's been working much better. You know, and then on my in-office or what I would call offline prices, my prices are higher. So if you were to go to one of my websites, you know, you may see, let's say a 10 by 10, for example, it might be online for $80 for a non-climate unit, and then you come into the office and it starts at $90. So when you talk about revenue management, now you're servicing two different segments, the price shoppers and the people who are coming in, because no one comes into your office just wanting to talk about storage off the cuff. Nobody does that. I mean, we all think about storage all the time because we're in the industry, but nobody comes in just to, you know, shoot the breeze with you about a storage unit. It just doesn't happen. People walk in your office because they need it. They call you because they need it. They email you because they need it, not because they want to talk about it. I mean, my time's valuable. You don't see me just calling electricians on a regular basis to talk about what it would cost to do something. It doesn't work that way. So, again, you know, think about that. Then we also talked about the unit, you know, what I would consider a unit location strategy, and this is becoming more and more popular, especially among the REITs. So, you know, I put out a hypothetical question, for example, is a 10 by 20 unit, let's say it's on a second floor of a building. So you have a multi-story building. Is that 10 by 20 more or less valuable if the unit is next to an elevator rather than across the building? I mean, to some people, that 10 by 20 right next to the elevator, because if you're renting a 10 by 20 in a two-story building, you're probably moving out, you know, a multi-room house or something like that. Just odds are, or you're storing a lot of inventory. And you have to put this stuff on carts. You have to put it in the truck, put it on carts, get it up the elevator, get it in there. How far do you want to go? So if you price your 10 by 20s away from the elevator at $100, let's just for numbers' sake, and 10 by 20 next to the elevator at $110, you've just thrown a 10% premium on that unit. And most people will pay it, I think.
Yep. I did the exact same thing. I have a site in Lake Havasu, and it's a lot of boats going in and out of those facilities, and those units that are on the end caps are a lot easier to get in and out of.
Yep.
They're a premium. I'm making an extra 20, 30, sometimes $40 extra on those units just because of the ease of getting in and out. So, you know, be mindful of that. What are your premium units and charge for it?
Right. Why not? I mean, everybody else does. When you buy an automobile and it has an extra feature on it, even if it's simple, they charge you for it. You know, if you get a hotel and you're in a, you know, maybe you're in a better room or just a higher floor, they'll charge you for it. Same with sporting. You know, the closer you are to the ground floor of the sporting event, whether it's the baseball field, football field, ice and hockey, you know, floor and basketball, those prices go up, and we should take cues for that. If you're on a plane, if you're good, the closer you are to first class, you know, the higher that ticket goes. I mean, Southwest does this to me all the time. They want to charge me for, you know, upgrading to get an A seat versus whatever other seat they have to offer. And I'll tell you, half the time I pay the $10 because it's worth to me to get on that plane sooner than trying to get a middle seat in the very back, you know, in a seat that I didn't want. So the last thing we talked in pricing real quickly was tiered pricing. We talked about the 3 types of occupancy, which is physical, square foot, and economic, and which one's the most important. And it's economic occupancy. Economic occupancy is when we're talking about all the occupancy, I consider it the most important. It's the only one that can go over 100%, and that's the one that tells me if you're making money. Because if you're 100% physically occupied and you're 0% economically occupied, that means you're giving away everything for free, and it means nothing. So, we really want to focus on that economic occupancy number, and this is where our tiered pricing comes in. So maybe you have a feature that someone's willing to pay more money for. Maybe you have conference room use. Maybe you have free sodas that you'll give out. Maybe access to snacks or, different access hours for people who are willing to pay more. So let's say, again, let's use that 10 by 10 again. You normally rent it for $100, but you know what? You have a couple extra features and someone's willing to pay you $115 for it to have those extra features every month. I mean, how much does it cost to get some soft drinks and some snack cakes or crackers and other stuff that you built during construction and just charge more for it? I mean, somebody might be willing to pay $15, $20 more a month just to have access to those things when they need them. Wi-Fi is another one. Anything like that where people will pay more money. So you can tier yourself up from now you were charging $100, and if you get $100, well, now you're 100% economically occupied on one unit. Now we're charging $120. Now we're 120% economic occupied. So, that's a real, those are just a couple of different things that you can take right now from this podcast and go earn yourself $1,000, $2,000 more a month. Right now, just by listening to this and implementing 3 simple things. So you can earn thousands of dollars more a month. And we talk about, how we evaluate facilities. That extra $3,000 a month goes right to the bottom line. You take that $3,000 over 10 months at $30,000, put a 10 cap on there, and that's high for what facilities are going. I mean, now we're talking an extra $300,000 just on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So,
a few little tweaks here and there can make a huge difference.
Oh, it's huge. And then the last thing we hit, and I'll go over this real quick, was incentives and bonuses. We should, if our facilities are doing well and the people who are managing them are doing a good job, we should be sharing that wealth with them. And there are ways that I think you can do that are a benefit to both the property and the manager. And I think a lot of times when we do incentives at self-storage facilities, they're a benefit to one or the other, but not both. I mean, if I'm giving you $5 per unit that you rent, and let's say we're running even every month, let's say you have 20 in, 20 out, that's probably more of a bad end on the owner's standpoint. Or it can be, depending on how long the people stay. But I think, that does hurt us in the long run as owners and operators. And then the other thing I think is hurtful too is when it's only based on, say, financial metrics, and no one understands how those metrics are put together. I mean, on our webinar, I can't show it obviously on the podcast while we're talking, but I had a very big, long scientific equation that I put on the on the slide, and I basically said, if your bonus program, to get to your bonus program, if it looks like this, you're doing it wrong. Because it has to be easy to understand and attainable. And I mean, I've worked for a number of storage companies, and so has Jim, and I've seen bonus programs that literally, when the manager had to figure out how they were going to get their bonus, it was like a 10 to 15-page document. And I'm not exaggerating. So if it takes that many pages for you to figure out how you're going to bonus your manager, you're doing it wrong. It's just too long. So, and the way we discussed it was...
We'll have to do a whole podcast just strictly on bonus structure. I think that'd be really beneficial.
I think it would be too, because I think everyone should have the opportunity to bit bonus. But I mean, basically the strategy that we covered was pretty quick on here, and it basically just said, there's a difference between your internet rate and what your base rate is, and then what I would consider an upsell rate is. So if you can get above what your base rate is, the number that you're using to budget on a regular basis, if your manager can use their skills to sell, and let's use that 10 by 10 example again. Let's say it's normally $100, and the manager can kick that thing up to $110, and you know how long your average customer stay is. Let's say it's 10 months. That's a lot more money that your manager just earned you. So, one of the things that I've been experimenting with, and it's been working very well, is giving the manager the difference between that base rate and the upsell as a bonus. So if they're able to rent that unit for $110, then the manager gets that $10 for the first month.
Yeah, great.
So,
And
that's basically where we ended.
So yeah, you got to reward them at the same time. So I'm all for it.
But then again, it works both ways because the manager can earn up to, as much as they can negotiate and sell on their units. I'm not saying you can't go obviously off the board compared to your competitors, but you need to have some sort of boundaries. But if they can get $115 a month on a $100 unit, that's $15 kicked back to them. If they do that 10 times a month, that's $150.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps us as owners and operators because, we'll be able to benefit off that extra $15 however long that tenant stays. So now it's benefiting both sides. It's very easy to understand, and it has a dramatic impact on revenue. So it works for both ways, and that's my opinion on it. I'm sure there's other people, and I'd love to hear what the other options are. And you could throw some different things in there to even sweeten the pot more about closing percentages and things like that. But if we're talking directly financial, that to me is the quickest way of doing it, to where it benefits all of us.
Perfect. And like I said, we'll definitely go in more detail. Every topic you've covered today, we can do a specific podcast strictly on that little topic and go in much more detail. But specifically for bonuses, I think that'd be a great one to talk about, and I would encourage people to email us, what their current structure is, and we can kind of give people different some choices.
Yeah, I'd love to hear some different. This is one that we came up with, but I'm always interested in things that benefit both, because if they don't benefit both the manager and the owner, then someone feels like the date that got left out of prom, and you can't have that feeling. You got to have everybody making money, and that's how it works.
I won't mention any names, but I actually had a phone call this week from an old associate of ours, and they're ready to jump ship because they just feel totally unappreciated and no bonus and no raise, and they just feel like they're getting crapped on all day long, and they're ready to bail. And this is one of the best managers I've ever had the pleasure of working with. So again, you can't be greedy about it. When you have a bonus like that, reward the manager for it. So again, I think that'd be a great topic for next week. We can go much more detail on that. But do you have anything else to kind of hit about a 30-minute mark here? We won't go too much longer. Do you have anything else you want to hit on revenue management?
No, just the last thing that you were saying, and we emphasize this a lot too. If your manager's unhappy or you have a bad manager, that's the worst thing for your self-storage facility, worse than anything you could possibly do. That will have the most dramatic effect the other way around than anything you can do.
Yeah.
So
and that kind of
that's how I want to end it.
Yeah, and that starts getting into the entitlement mentality. And when people start doing that, let's say that managers start getting some sticky fingers, and they can start justifying certain things.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes into our. We've had it's been about 3 weeks since we've last done an episode on This Week in Dough, but we had a topic that came across this week, and I'm like, we gotta touch upon that. So anyway, without further ado, let's go into This Week in Dough. And like we touched upon about manager entitlement, that type of thing. I'm not going to say all managers do this, but you got to put yourself in the manager's point of view sometimes if they feel like they're getting put down and not rewarded and all that, and they've been there for a long time. I don't know how many times I've gone to a site and I've had to fire the manager in the first day of being there because I'm doing a quick audit and I start seeing some fishy items coming up. And Matt found this article and sent it over this week, and it's regarding, do you have this article pulled up in front of you, Matt?
I sure don't, but I know
what the specifics were.
The specifics, well, I can remember the specifics that I remember off the top of my head. I can't remember what state it came out of. But basically the manager was unfortunately caught. Fortunately caught, but unfortunate that it happened. A manager had embezzled about $16,000 from a self-storage facility. And basically how they were doing it, which is a very, very common way of doing this, is that they were asking customers to pay in cash, and if the customer paid in cash, they would give the person a free month in rent or certain specials depending on the amount and everything else like that. And this is a very, very, very common way of embezzling from self-storage facilities. Very common.
Oh, yeah. I mean, cash business lots of places. So
Yeah.
there's opportunity there.
Right, and when we say this, I mean, we're not accusing every manager of having the opportunity to steal in the sense that if they're upset, they're going to steal from you. That's not what we're saying in any way, shape, or form. But what we are saying, and what my old accounting teacher used to say, you know, back when I was taking accounting in college, before I, you know, found the light and went into finance, you know, basically it's all about, you know, the opportunity of it. If you're having that much money around all the time, and then if there's
we had a little technical difficulty there, but we're reconnected now. So we were just talking about, you know, we're not accusing managers of doing that, but when an opportunity presents itself there, you know, so it happens more often than I care to, you know, realize. You know, a lot of these places do the managers start stealing, and again, the bottom line for, you know, this week in Dough is put those checks and balances in and pull the audit reports.
right.
I mean, a lot of this thing could be done very easily with the software that you're running. It's pulling the correct audit reports, and that will show you the red flags. And then from there, you can delve more deeply into it. But it's just, bottom line is just don't be lazy about it. Have a scheduled audit, and just make sure, you know, everything's on the up and up, especially if you have a certain site that's dealing with a lot of cash.
Yeah, and I mean, just real quick, I mean, check your management reports, review your write-offs. I mean, we all have write-offs every month, whether it's from lien sales or anything like that, but review your write-offs. Review the units that are at your property that are in for, that aren't paying anything, your complimentary units, if you have any. Review your discounts. All of that. You know, you can even send out, and I've seen this happen where you could even send out, you know, notices to customers that, you know, call the ones that pay cash regularly, randomly, and just ask them or send them a notice saying, hey, you know, have you ever been offered anything to keep paying cash or any offers, you know, other than what seems normal? And, you know, a lot of times you can nip it in the bud right away if you think there's something wrong, but we should all be auditing on a fairly regular basis.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And a lot of it's done, you know, at the site, but nowadays with a lot of the web-based softwares, you can do a lot of the homework remotely. And then once you're there at the site, you already have a game plan already set of what specifically you're looking for. And again, I've caught this. I think that's not the managers I've hired. That's when we take over a site, and I start doing my little checklist for the audit. And it doesn't take long. I mean, most of these guys are pretty sloppy. They leave clues, and it's not too hard to really put your finger on what's going on fairly quickly. And there we go. There's another podcast episode. We can do a whole thing specifically on some audit techniques.
On auditing, yeah.
But bottom line is just, you know, put those checks and balances in place and catch before anything like that gets out of hand. And you won't be like that poor owner that was out, what would you say, like $16,000?
Yes. Yeah. And it did, and I don't remember if the article said how much time it was over. But I mean, if you think about that, just take that $16,000 and throw it on a cap rate. That's how much facility value you lost just on that.
Yep. And the sad thing is, that's probably what they could prove. I bet you could probably double or triple that.
Probably
closer.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's exactly what you said. Exactly what you can prove. And I mean, a lot of times, you know, what you can prove isn't necessarily all of what's been happening. So
makes you sick. Well, good. I think we covered a lot on today's podcast. Again, I urge everyone to go to our website in the show notes. We will at least provide the slideshow for this, and hopefully we can also get the link to the actual webinar from the FSA, and we'll have that on there for you as well.
Yep, that would be great.
All right. Well, we'll talk to you next time, Matt.
All right, sounds great. Have a good week.
All right. See you. Bye. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the 3 Mile Domination Podcast. Please check us out at our website, 3miledomination.com, where you can download our free ebook, connect with us on all the social media platforms, and to subscribe to this podcast. Please spread the word to those you think that will benefit from this show. Just don't tell your competitors. Thanks again.